Let's bring in for analysis Marco Vicenzino, joining us live, of course, international affairs commentator and director of the Global Strategy Project. Marco, as ever, thank you for being with us. There's another development just breaking, which I'd like to put to you because this very much concerns your line of expertise, I think. Sergei Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister, has warned his US counterpart, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, against the use of force in Venezuela. Do you think this is where the crisis may well be heading?
Not at this point, but as time goes by and things can escalate, it's an unpredictable situation. You can't exclude any possibility. But here I would say is that in terms of the regime's survival, obviously there's many factors: support from the military, you have economic diplomatic pressure from the United States, the regional neighbors of Venezuela, the major European powers, the UK, Germany, France, and Spain. But I think here is a clear thing is, will their creditors, mainly Russia and China, continue support the Maduro regime? And that's an important question. I think if you compare China to Russia, Russia is clearly the junior partner in this relationship. China is more pragmatic. What really concerns China is that debt it's paid, is debts that Venezuela owes that are paid, and secondly, is long-term investments remain secure. Behind the scenes, talks have been held. Guaido already made promises to the Chinese. They have Venezuela has a $20 billion debt with China. So Guaido very astutely guaranteed them that he would protect their interests in the long term. However, no such overtures were made to Russia. Granted, Russia is owed less. I mean, it's the oil company, Rosneft, is owed about $2.3 billion. But if you really compare in terms of what's at stake for Russia it's more strategic. For them, Venezuela is part of a broader chip in a wider geopolitical competition with the United States, particularly if they can keep the U.S. busy in its own hemisphere. Although in the long term, and then also you have to consider the fact if they were to lose Venezuela as a chip, it in no way compares in terms of strategic importance when you're looking at Ukraine or Syria. And then if you look at the broader neighborhood, China has clearly important relationships in the region beyond Venezuela. It's the #1 trading partner of Brazil. It's the #1 trading partner of Argentina. It has key economic relationships with all the nations of the region. On the other hand, Russia is far more limited in terms of its relationships with the other region. And if you look at the broader geopolitical realities of Latin America, you look at, since the end of the Cold War, most states of the Western Hemisphere, with the exceptions of Venezuela and Cuba and increasingly Nicaragua, most of the states are democracies. China it looks in its long-term interest, and it's looking mostly in terms of economics. Most of those states that are democratic states really reject what they would see as a Russian interference in its region. So in terms of a broader geopolitical game, for the Russians, they have much at stake. But for China, they're hedging, basically. They're looking at the region more economically and its long-term economic interests.
And Marco, given that it's reported and confirmed by my contacts in Caracas that China is talking to Juan Guaido, do we read into this that say maybe things may be switching, perhaps pressure internationally might be now even weighing heavier on Maduro?
Yes, definitely. If you look at China, like I said, China, its foreign policy is far more pragmatic. It looks long term. It looks at the long game. Who will guarantee its interest? Who will pay its debts? Who will secure its long-term investments? Will it be the Maduro regime or will it be Guaido? And if the Chinese make the calculated decision that it'll be the Guaido regime as time goes by, they may not publicly back Guaido 100% with the public, but they'll do it behind the scenes and in ways that they'll start pulling the plug. Yet that decision, whether it's been made or not, remains to be determined. But as time goes by, the odds are stacked against Maduro with respect to the Chinese and in terms of other players of the region also.
Mark, of the humanitarian aid, which we understand is stuck at the border with Colombia. Now, Guaido is saying that this will enter the country on February the 23rd. He's being quite precise about this. Do you feel this could lead to a flashpoint between Maduro and Guaido, maybe the army being involved?
Sure. I mean, listen, you have the army occupying one of the main bridges that connects Colombia with Venezuela. So you can see a possibility of an escalation at the border itself. But once you can see also within Venezuela, he's been very careful. Maduro's been extremely careful not to physically detain Guaido, because he knows right now he has full diplomatic recognition. So this is a very, very dangerous game he's playing, whether or not he would detain him or not. That's a decision he's going to have to make in a calculated fashion to see, basically weighing the costs and benefits and making an analysis of it. And if he feels pressure to the point whereby he needs to detain Guaido, he may make that decision. But that would further escalate the entire, we can call this this chess game, or escalate it further exponentially.
Marco Vincenzino, thank you very much, as ever, for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you on the programme. Marco Vincenzino, the International Affairs Commentator and Director of Global Strategy Project. Marco, thank you very much indeed.